2023 World Immunization Week has been on for the past 6 days, having taken off on April the 24th, and is expected to wrap up tomorrow, Sunday, April the 30th. It is a dedicated window which focuses on catching up on vaccination programs that were disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. For us to get first-hand information about this year's commemoration, which has the theme, The Big Catch-Up, we are now being joined here by Dr. Alero Roberts, a consultant in public health and associate professor in maternal and child health at College of Medicine, University of Lagos. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Tell us about this week. We've had about 4 or 5 days already since the 24th.
Yes.
And it wraps up tomorrow. The theme is the big catch-up. How bad has the COVID pandemic and all the, time that we really couldn't get ourselves, together, how bad has it affected immunization in Nigeria? And do you think that we can really do the catch-up at this time?
We're certainly not going to achieve any catch-up between today and tomorrow, that's for sure. Number one. Number two, what COVID did, if it did us any favors at all in any way, was to show us the gaps and the lapses that existed in our healthcare situation, in our healthcare sector, which led to what we have. So basically, it wasn't COVID alone, or when it happened, that we had the breakdown in routine immunization. We've had this thing for decades. Polio was useful in the sense that it strengthened some of the strategies to making sure that routine immunization can go on. But as with everything, when you put a program in a silo, all the focus is on that program. So we focused on polio. And of course, polio was easy. It was an oral vaccine, anybody can deliver it. But we then lost sight of the other routine antigens that need to be given. And we saw one of the results recently with this diphtheria outbreak. Diphtheria.
Diphtheria.
Really? Diphtheria? I don't think I've seen that even in medical school. So we can see how very easily you can lose hard-won gains very quickly with just what I would call administrative carelessness. So no, we're not going to achieve the big catch-up. Not tomorrow, not this year. Not the way we are going. There's still a lot of work to be done. And unfortunately, immunization, the biggest failure of any political administration to its people, requires input from sectors outside the health sector. So you cannot just blame the Ministry of Health by itself. The key thing that it requires is political commitment, which then must be backed by funding.
Yeah, but is that not what the Minister of Health represents, the political force of the federal government?
Yes.
Ordinarily.
So where is the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Finance? Where is the Minister of Roads? Where is the Minister of Infrastructure? Where is the Minister of Power?
In Abuja.
I hear you.
So we're talking about, the big catch-up, and even though there's of course, we are still, really lagging behind in Africa and even in Nigeria. More recently, we've seen the approval of the R21 Matrix M malaria vaccine that was developed by scientists in the University of Oxford. Which was at first approved in Ghana just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we're seeing the approval. Could we say that maybe that is at least one step forward that we're taking, seeing as malaria is responsible for the deaths of thousands of children in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole?
You are right. It's a very important step, but don't forget that this has been decades in the making. Malaria vaccine that we've even come this far is kudos to all those scientists who have spent countless nights trying to make this thing work. So, but we have got to approval stage. That's fantastic. Our biggest hurdle is going to be distribution and giving the vaccine to those children between the ages of 5 months, am I right? 5 months and 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Which is the most cost-effective stage we can start giving the vaccine to. So all the issues that relate to vaccination and immunization, and I don't use them as interchangeable terms, they are both distinctly different. All those issues still have to be resolved We've got the vaccine, we've approved it, wonderful. And, many more vaccines are in the pipeline that I'm hoping will get approval based on science, because this approval is just based on science for now. But we still have to overcome the social, cultural, and economic hurdles before we can see real gains from this vaccine.
You talk about different hurdles, and I want to just pick on the social hurdle, because we've spoken about the role that the government plays. But what about the role that parents play as well? Because we also see a high range of immunization hesitancy. People not wanting to actually, even though they have access to it, not wanting their children to be part of Western medicine. And this is 2023. You would want to believe that a lot of people should be able to understand how important it is to get their children immunized. So why is this still something that we're grappling with in modern times?
So I'm going to flip the script a little, and I'm going to become the interviewer right now. Are you vaccinated against COVID? Fully?
Yes, I am.
And you are?
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic. So you have knowledge, you have education, you have the power to ask the questions and seek out the information that you need. You represent probably about 7% of the Nigerian population. And that's what is actually scary, because the biggest reason for people not to be immunized, and for people, I'm saying for the babies, is that parents are afraid. They don't know. They've been affected by religious influences, cultural influences. We all are very aware of the issues we had with trying to grapple with the polio issue and trying to eradicate polio in Nigeria, and how long it took us. I mean, it took for the then Director General of WHO, Dr. Margaret Chan, to come and have a meeting with our then President of blessed memory, Yaradua, to address some of the issues that, look, it is your people in the north, the emirs, the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, who are telling their people not to be vaccinated. We need to flip that. And there was a huge campaign, media got involved, journalists, education, everybody got involved to re-educate the people. And it still took, close to 10 to 15 years before we got to the point we got to recently, where we could say, we are now polio-free, and remove our name from that. So we need to do that again and again. We are all witness to what happened with the COVID vaccine and the hesitancy. And one thing I must say is that these concerns are very real, very relevant, very cogent to the people who have concerns. Because we are all sitting here and we remember the Trovan and cerebrospinal meningitis.
Yes.
Yes. So these are very real concerns. And the point that I keep saying is that if we don't have the frame of reference upon which we can have these conversations, it's very, very difficult to have a conversation with the average Nigerian young adult who has no education in science, no health literacy. And then start to explain, am I explaining immunotherapy? Am I explaining immunology? Am I explaining immunization? Am I explaining cold chain? What am I explaining to somebody who has no frame of reference upon which we can have this conversation? So there are huge barriers that we need to, there's so much research going on about the zero coverage, the missed dose, and why we have so many, conflict has a part to play, and the issues that have been associated with COVID and whatnot. But when we get down to it, let's assume that there's peace all over Nigeria and everything. We will still have a sizable proportion of people who will not bring their children out for immunization for reasons that have nothing to do with conflict and whatnot. And those are the barriers that we need to address. These are the social, cultural, religious, economic barriers that we need to overcome, and they are myriad. And these are the ones that are, like I said, outside of the health sector per se.
Yeah, Doctor, I like the fact that you made reference to what has happened before and why a lot of people feel some concern. Do you blame them? Recalling what happened in Kano, the other time, even with the COVID. Yes, you mentioned those who are health aware, but even at that, a lot of educated people still query some aspects of the manner in which the COVID vaccinations were rushed and all the issues that are still out there in the Western world. And a lot of people are not just fully convinced that this is something that they should subject themselves to.
You're right. That's why I keep saying that. You see, it's when you have these conversations that you get to understand, and this is what I do, risk communication, community engagement. This is my oxygen, as it were. It's when you have these conversations that you have a deeper understanding of why people think the way they do and therefore why they behave the way they do. It's called health-seeking behavior. And because it permeates through every sector of our existence, it's a very cogent, it's a very important conversation to have all the time. So yes, today we're relating it to immunization, whether you will or will not. But tomorrow is related to your lifestyle habits, taking medication for comorbid conditions, everything. So those relevant, and I keep telling people, ask the questions, express your concerns. Don't sit in a bubble of ignorance and fear and anxiety for no reason at all. We will answer your questions. And where we don't have the answers, we will go and look for the answers and come and bring them back to you. But the thing is, I keep telling my students, the only stupid question to ask is the question you did not ask. You must ask those questions. You have a right. So I do not blame anybody at all for saying, the way they developed this COVID vaccine, it didn't get as bio. Like that. Malaria came out after COVID, yet COVID came out well after malaria. How come there? You see, these are genuine questions. And you sit down and, if you can have that conversation, you can start to explain what is going on. You may win some, you may not win some, but everybody still, I'm a pro-choice person, so everybody still has a right to choose. But the question I always put to them at the end of it is that you are taking a decision, but it's not for you. It's for the person who doesn't have a voice yet. For the person who doesn't have power yet. I still remember one very, very, very sad situation. This was when we were in the process, we were doing one of the mop-up polio vaccinations around our area there in Mushi, Diaraba. And we met a father of 4, whose first 3 children were all bubbly, happy, running around, But the 4th had obviously had polio very badly and had the limb paralysis and was now, unable to join the others at play. What happened? He said he was not around when the first 3 were immunized. So the wife had her babies and she goes for antenatal, goes to deliver the babies, and they said, come back in 6 weeks. She came back in 6 weeks and the child was immunized and she was in the immunization program. And that was what had happened for the first 3 children. So the children were routinely immunized. Then somehow she now got pregnant for the 4th. Husband was back. What are you doing? Where are you going? Because of what? Who said? No, I forbid you. And that 4th child was now not immunized. And for life.
Wow. That child is
going to suffer that disability for the rest of its life.
Doctor, that's a very, very interesting point that you've raised. The fact that this decision in itself is not even for the person who has to make it, it's for someone else.
Exactly.
So at this point, do you think that maybe there should be certain policies or certain laws that should be passed into the Senate that makes it compulsory for parents because if we're looking at the number of children that we've lost to prevent diseases that they didn't have to die from because parents didn't make the right decision, should there be policies put in place to maybe force their hand somewhat? I
would balk at that. No, I will not compel or compulsorily force anybody to do that, because then one day they're going to come and compel or compulsorily force me to do something that I intrinsically do not want to do. So no, like I said, I'm a very pro-choice person. I will speak to you, we will engage you, we will discuss with you, we will answer all your concerns, we will do the research, we will give you the numbers. Because there are still, if you go and do the research, you will still find that, yes, some low percentage of immunized children come up with the complications of immunization. That too exists. I cannot hide an inconvenient fact. You understand what I'm saying? But compulsorily force anybody, no. I know we have strategies in place that are existing, Lagos State particularly, that, incentivize
Okay.
Immunization of children. So if you've gone for antenatal, you've been educated, you've asked your questions in a nice, safe manner to somebody whom you trust, you now deliver your babies, you will immunize your children because you want the immunization card when you go to enroll your child in school.
Will you apply this same sentiment as to being pro-choice when it comes to immunization or vaccination? Will you apply the same sentiment to the question of COVID, for example?
Yes.
And how the argument at that time was leaning towards compulsory vaccination?
I did. I spoke about it. Yes, I know on several occasions on TV I did speak about it because they would ask me that question and I'll say, no, you cannot force anybody to be vaccinated. But look at what happened to that tennis player. A country can say, if you are not vaccinated, do not come in. Which case, I have a choice.
Not to go?
Not to go. I'm not going to be vaccinated. I won't go to your country. If you are not vaccinated, you cannot go on an airplane or whatever. Several airlines had made that, So, but you cannot compulsorily force. I would not subscribe to that.
If we think about it in the light where it's pro-choice, meaning, it's your choice. But as a guardian of another life, you are making that decision for that child. So in a way, if the government is stepping in and saying that you have to immunize this child, you have to vaccinate this child, knowing fully well that this is something that the child needs, well, you're not necessarily taking the choice away from the parents. Instead, you are making that choice for the child. We see social services where they look at a family situation and then they decide that it's better for that child to be taken away from that situation. Can't it be likened in some?
It can be likened in that, but again, you are looking at on a case-by-case basis. So you look at a family situation and you decide, no, the children in this situation are not safe. We need to remove them, make them wards of court, make them wards of the state. And the state or the court is now responsible for everything to do with that child until the child becomes an adult. And we've seen what has happened in richer countries where there's a welfare system. Yes, you see what happens to the juvenile services, the child services, and so on and so forth. But these are particular cases. You can't make that blanket decision for everybody. Because where do you draw the line? Today is immunization. Tomorrow, what is it going to be? I can't get a body piercing. I can't do a tattoo. Not that I believe in. I personally won't do them, but I will fight to defend your rights to choose whether you are going to do that or not. So it's very difficult to draw the line. And, you don't want to go down that road of compulsorily forcing people. Then they now say that, oh, you've had 4 children where you must be sterilized. Do you understand? Okay. It's a very, very dangerous road to proceed down. So no, compulsorily forcing anybody to do anything. I will beg, plead, educate, convince, cajole, but force, no. I would
Let me bring us back to the point, where we started from, the big catch-up, and you said that it would take a while. I would like you to speak to what can we begin to do rightly that will put us on the pathway to eventually catching up soon. And then secondly, what really is India doing far better than us that we are not doing, especially in the area of manufacturing, healthcare in general. We took over sadly from them as the poorest, the poorest nation in the world, the nation with the highest number of poor people. So it means that as fantastic as India might be doing in the area of healthcare, in the area of technology, they still have a huge number of poor people, just like we do. But then we can at least emulate them in the areas where they are excelling, and healthcare seems to be part of it.
Have you looked at the Indian educational system? I think you need to take not even a deep dive, just a cursory glance into how highly they rate education in India from day one. That is where we have lost it in this country. If we were to, I listened to somebody the other day, called himself a public affairs analyst, and he was asking an incredibly inane question. And I thought, which school did he go to that he did not learn in primary school about malaria?
Yeah.
That was the question. I couldn't understand it. And then I thought, well, I looked at his age, then I could no longer blame him. By the time he entered primary school, primary education in this country had been completely decimated. We are only now struggling in some certain states in the southwest of Nigeria to claw back our gains in primary. Because what children do not learn as children,
It will be tough.
it's tough.
As adults.
It's tough. That introduction to science.
Yeah.
When did you first look at a cell under the microscope? Wasn't it in class 3, class 4?
Absolutely.
In primary school.
And there were laboratories.
And there were laboratories and science teachers and math teachers and art teachers
Yeah.
who made you draw the mosquito. So it was an all-round, I mean, I'm so proud when I say, look, I never went to school abroad. The English I learned it here. Science I learned it here. The medicine, everything I've learned it here. But I have been the product of a fantastic educational system that shortly after I passed through, when the military came in, and I have no fear or favor in saying it, was systematically decimated. So if we are to start on the big catch-up, that's where we are going to start.
Education.
Primary education, primary healthcare service. We need to strengthen primary education and primary healthcare service. Because there's no question about how to feed my children or what to do for them. Because I've been educated right from primary school on simple things, nutrition, hygiene, immunization, everything, simple things. How to keep yourself alive and healthy. So that's where we need to start, sir.
All right, I mean, we don't have much time left for me, but I just want to quickly touch on this brain drain that we're seeing. And I think about 3 weeks ago, we had that bill that was passed of trying to hold doctors back for five years.
It wasn't passed. It was
presented. That was presented. Sorry, not passed, but it had been approved on the second reading. I just want to know what your thoughts are about, about that particular bill before you
You are troublesome, aren't you? I think my thoughts were made very clear right here on this table that day when the dear proponents dared to make his face available on television and try to defend the indefensible. The point of the matter is, and a lot of people haven't realized, we're not losing the new medical graduates. We're losing the teachers and consultants faster than we're losing the new ones.
Wow.
And a big shout out to all my new doctors who got their results on Friday. Congratulations, so proud of you all. But they're not the ones going.
Let's hope they stay, right?
They won't go now.
Okay.
They won't go now. They'll go and do their youth corps, they'll do their house job, they'll do their youth corps, they'll start writing the exams. And it takes about 2-3 years to write the exams. So automatically, it's going to be 5 years legally and properly before they'll say, this system doesn't reward anybody. I better look after myself. Because in about 5 years, they're now looking for spouses. They're now thinking of where their children are going to go to school. They're now looking at, I can never forget, and I say this every single time I'm given the chance, that conversation I had on a corridor with a registrar who was was just going to do her exam to become a consultant. So we're talking 10-15 years after graduation. And she says, Ma, I'm going. What happened? She said, Ma, the money I need to put down to pay for school fees for 2 of my 3 children to attend the school I attended is more than the ticket I need to pay for the entire family of 5 to relocate to Canada. My husband has said, let's go. What do you say? I said, bring the paper. And I signed. How do you counter that argument? The school she went to, she cannot afford for her own children because she's a doctor. Her husband is a doctor. What do you want to say to them? So even if they are patriotic and they want to stay, we're talking about taking a decision that affects those who at the time have neither voice nor power. They're thinking of their children. They're thinking of their legacy.
Wow, Dr. Roberts, I mean...
Such a powerful conversation. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Dr. Alero
Thank you.
Roberts, for coming in and spending time with us this morning, of course, to talk about the importance of immunization and vaccination.